Good evening. My name is Thurman Greco, and the name of this program is Let's Live, and it's coming to you from Woodstock, New York, Channel 23 Educational TV, and from my YouTube channel, Let's Live with Thurman Greco. And I have two really exciting guests tonight. So can we start off with you guys telling me who you are and about the book you brought?
Sure. Mademoiselle?
I'm Linda Brownell. My husband Neal Brownell is the author.
So I'm Neal Brownell, and my stage name is Neal Brownell, the Crazy Inventor. and that is because I'm an inventor, and all my friends tell me that I'm crazy, so it's the Crazy Inventor.
Okay. So you invented a book?
Well, in a sense, yes. In a sense, yes. The book is inspired by my upbringing and the things that I went through in order to learn what is in the book. And it features not religion, because I'm not a religious person, but it features my spirituality, one teacher, how she changed everything, and basketball.
And basketball.
Well,
isn't this the basketball season right now?
Basketball season starts, real soon.
Real soon.
Yeah, real soon.
So this is good.
Yes. It's
so
great.
How long has this book, The Doorway, been out in circulation?
The Doorway is pretty much brand new. The name, we have not been putting this out because we were trying to figure out exactly what title to use. And because of the lack of a title, we weren't actually trying to sell it for quite a while, which was very frustrating on my dad. The book was done, but we didn't have a title, so.
So now you have the book, and how long have you had this book?
We started working on this book 8 years ago.
Yes.
Yes, 8 years ago.
And this is your first book?
And this is our first book.
I hate to say it, but that really is the way it goes.
Yeah.
And then, of course, you started off, and you didn't, what did you call it when you first started out?
When we first started out, we called it, well, it's been so many names. we released it as
Just the Way You
Just
Are.
the Way You Are, You're Amazing and I'll Prove It.
Okay, so now that one you didn't like that one, so now you redid it so that you have this one. You know what I find? My first book took me a good 10 years. And I run across people all the time, that first book takes so long. And then once you do it, it just kind of all comes together. So that if you need a second book, hey, we got a second book. You need a third book, we got it. It's okay. It's really interesting, but that first one is such a struggle because there's not really, there's nobody there to take you by the hand.
Correct, yes. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. In the book, I use basketball because basketball, any game, is a microcosm of life. And so when I started playing basketball, I didn't have a coach, I didn't have a father. We moved around the country all of the time, so I had to teach myself. So it was the same thing with basketball. It took me years to learn everything I needed to learn, and I failed, and I failed, and I failed, and I failed, and I was sure I was never going to get there. But when it finally started clicking, just all of a sudden, it was so much fun. It was just so much, but you had to stick with it until you got to that point. And the same is true of writing a book. It's exactly the same.
Did you take any classes or anything?
No.
I in the beginning, I didn't. In the beginning, I had some notes, and the person who did the doorway for you, was taking some reflexology classes with me, Lucy Swenson from the Turning Mill, and she kept saying, Thurman, there's a book there. Well, yeah, but it's a decade away. But then I did take some writing classes, but I'm not sure that they helped.
Okay.
Because I had never done it before.
And it comes from inside too.
Well, the story and everything comes, but I didn't know any of the basics. But you do in here, you do talk about an illustrator named Rich Molinari.
Yes.
Molinari.
Now, how did he get into this story?
When I first wrote this book, I sat down and actually thought it was a children's book. That's what I thought it was. And I wrote a book, and it was a pretty good book, I thought. So we got a hold of a gentleman who was going to lay it out for us and things like that. And I said to him, okay, Joe, how much is this going to cost and how long is it going to take? And he says, well, give me a couple of days. Well, a couple of days went by, and I got a hold of him, said, okay, Joe, what's up? He goes, well, I got a hold of a lady down in South Carolina. Can I send it to her? I said, what are you talking about? I said, the book is done. What is she going to do? And his exact words were, Neal, this book is too important for it to be done wrong. And so we sent it down to her, and then Joe found Rich. And he's in North Carolina.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is really a Carolina book.
Basically.
Yes.
It's a Carolina book. And what did she do for the book?
Well, it was really interesting to me because, like I said, I'm an inventor and I have had some inventions. I've got a patent. And people will come up to you and they'll say, hey, this is a great idea. But nobody has any money, so they don't offer money. And nobody has any time, so they don't offer any time.
Right.
But when this book came along and Joe said those words to me, I'm like, okay, well, I don't mean to be skeptical, but how much is this going to cost me? And Joe says, oh, no. This book isn't going to be back to me in 2 years, and I won't make a dime between that time. And the woman you're sending it to, she's not going to make a dime either. She's going to look for somebody to help you. So people started coming out and helping me. That's how the gentleman who's helping us advertise it came along in a class, and he goes, Neal, can I help you? And I told him, we don't have any money. He says, I don't care.
I think that's wonderful.
Yeah.
So you're giving classes now.
Yes.
Tell me how you book a class, where you give them. Tell me all about that.
But Linda does an awful lot of that. Why don't you say?
Just it's just something I used to work in Nashville and work with some of the stars and stuff, and so it's kind of something that I developed there. Just calling people, you have a list and you call people and you have
email them.
You email them. You have a set thing that you might say, or specifically for that, and then you have all your media, where you have there's a what they call a speaker sheet that you do, and it tells where you've spoken and kind of gives an idea of what you speak on and all that kind of stuff. So I did a lot of research online and found out what to do. And being in Nashville, that was what I did. I did the media kits and the press kits and all that type of situation. So that's something I'm real good at. So,
that's good.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
So that helped.
And so you have a list, you have to make a list, and you have to make phone calls. And one thing that was really cool, because we're also trying to talk to different organizations to speak to them, and ran across a gentleman that I've known all my life at a yard sale a few weeks ago, and he's the commander of the American Legion in Ulster County. So we're talking to him, maybe doing some speaking there.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So
just
how, well, I guess you really have nothing to compare it with, but if I were to try to talk to someone about giving a class or speaking in the midst of a pandemic.
That's been really tough.
That has been, difficult.
That's been really tough.
What happens?
During the actual pandemic, the height of it, there was more than a year that we didn't give any classes, and it was killing me. It was killing me because I absolutely love standing in front of a class and teaching.
Really?
I love it.
So how do you get beyond the pandemic?
So far, we haven't done a whole lot of getting beyond it, other than we're talking to people.
We're just starting.
It's just now starting to come back. It was really interesting prior to the pandemic. Remember, I told you that people don't come out of the woodwork to help you, and the fact is that if you give out 100 sheets of paper for advertising. If you get 2 of them
Yeah.
that are even interested, then you've done really, really well.
Yeah.
Well, Linda and I gave out a piece of paper to somebody, well, a whole media kit to somebody, and I told Linda, I turned to Linda and says, all right, all we have to do is give out another 99, and we might get 2. Well, Monday came around, and that organization called us up and said, will you come teach it? I said, are you kidding me? And then she made a cold call to a school, and sight unseen, the school called back and said, will you come teach it?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was so much fun to teach. It was so much fun.
Oh, wow.
To
Well, but
see
now the
kids.
schools are open.
Yeah, they
So you can go
are.
back.
Yeah, now we can start going back.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
And because this is a basketball story, will you be working, like giving classes to basketball teams and
Certainly.
things like that?
Certainly.
That's a wonderful
Absolutely.
thing.
Absolutely. One of the things I learned about in basketball that was really, really cool to me, I was born essentially blind. And so I spent the first 7 years, almost 8 years of my life, experience people by sensing their spirit. So when I got into basketball, I realized that here was a place that nobody judged anybody by the color of their skin, by their sex, by whether they were Catholic or Jewish. Nobody cared about anything except for, can you help me win? That's all I cared about. And that was one of the many, many things I learned from basketball, is that it makes no difference who you are. If you are bringing something valuable to the table, we just have to find that value.
So that's the leveler. It's the,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and so how long, when you give a class, how long does it last?
The one that we were doing is 1.5 to 2 hours, depending on how much the people interact with us.
And what age group do you like to work with?
We work with age groups from all the way from, what's the youngest, about 11, 12,
11,
13,
12, yeah.
all the way up to adults.
And how far are you willing to travel?
As far as we have to travel, for the most part. I mean, other than the only constraints we really have is how much is it going to cost us to get there,
Yeah.
you know, and things like that. So,
Are you trying to sell your book anywhere?
we are in the process of doing all of that. Yes, and it's like I said, marketing is really, really tough. It's a whole nother ballgame. This was tough, and then the marketing, as you know.
It's another one.
Yeah,
It's another
marketing
thing.
is totally different, especially today, because I'm 63 years old, Linda is 66, and each of us have been in businesses throughout our life that had nothing to do with the internet, and we were quite successful at it. Now the internet comes along, and everything that we knew before is now gone. So now we have to learn all new stuff, how to advertise on the internet, how to do this, how to do that.
That's for me. That's been a huge challenge.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
been massive.
Really, it
Yeah.
has been a very difficult challenge because, for one thing, there was one bookstore chain that I was trying to get one of my books in, and I just hit a glitch and I couldn't get beyond it. And then I realized that they're really not interested in having anybody get beyond it. You know?
Yeah, it's very, very difficult. You have to take it directly to the people, and that's why we're standing up and giving speeches and things like that, because that gets beyond all of that. I'm told by the gentleman, Shane Brown is his name, the gentleman is helping us do the advertising, that we need to get beyond that point and get to someone who has an audience already.
Oh, that's
and,
interesting.
And stand up in front of their audience.
That's
So,
interesting.
Yeah.
So you're going to be working with organizations.
Yes. Yes.
I think that's perfect. Can you share with us the story in the book?
Well, the story is actually a series of stories, and it started out, like I said, I was essentially blind when I was born, but I was misdiagnosed, And when I was misdiagnosed, the people around me abused me, okay, because I wasn't as smart, I couldn't do anything, and all this kind of stuff. But what was really, really confusing to me was because I sensed their spirits, I knew that they were good. I could feel that they were good. I could feel that they cared about me, but they were treating me bad. So I was, as a little boy, you can imagine how confusing that would be. And as I grew up, and I am an inventor, and inventors look into absolutely everything. And one of the things I study is how is the human brain programmed. And what was happening with them, looking back all these years, is they were frustrated. They didn't know how to help me. And so they took it out on me because they were frustrated with themselves. So we got beyond that. Then there was a couple of teachers that tried to help me. But once the brain is programmed, it will turn off virtually any new information that goes against the information that is already there. And so when somebody would come up and say, hey, Neal, you're smart. I've been taught for the first 11 years of my life I'm an idiot. So automatically my brain wouldn't hear it. Just turn it off completely. And then I met a teacher, and this teacher, I don't know if she knew what she was doing, but what she did was she used unbelievably simple techniques. And because of that, my brain couldn't ignore it. Because it was so childlike, my brain's like, I want to ignore this information, but I can't.
Oh, that's great.
Right? And that's what I've done in the book. It looks so childlike, but it gets around all that programming because your brain can't ignore it. This is so simple. I mean, yeah, I am worth something. And that's what the book is all about. It's teaching people that each and every one of us is worth enormous amounts. I tell everybody, one of the things that happens with me is because I'm an inventor, everybody is valuable. Everybody. I have no idea who may have the next idea I need to solve the problem I'm working on. When I'm working on an invention and I run into a problem, I am so close to it that I can't see the answer. So I will literally ask a person, please look at this and tell me what you see. And they'll come back and go, Neal, I have no idea anything about this. And I would say, that's the whole point. That's the whole point. You're going to see it so differently than I'll see it, and that'll allow me to start seeing it differently. And so I have no idea if the person that everybody says is useless that's down in that ditch has the answer I need. So you raise them up and you say, hey, if I help you, you help me, and I help you, and it goes back and forth. And that's what the book is all about.
That's very interesting. And how old were you, or what was the circumstance that made you realize that you had discovered a pathway?
It was when I met Mrs. Anderson, that teacher. She literally got down on her knees and she looked me in the eye and she said, you're smart. Now everybody else has done that, so instantaneously I said, no way, it ain't happening, I'm an idiot. And I told her that, and she says, you're smart and I'll prove it. She then used those simple techniques, and after every technique that she used, she would hold a piece of paper up and say, see, you're smart, and this proves it. And my brain couldn't ignore it because it was so simple, and I did do it, so I must be smart. And she changed everything, absolutely everything, with those simple techniques.
How old was she?
She was a retired teacher. What happened was I was in 5th grade. I had already failed 2 classes. And so I was supposed to be in 7th grade. But they're like, well, we can't hold him back any longer. We got to keep pushing him on. And finally, when I made it to 5th grade, they're like, no, he's not going to be able to do this. We got to put him into a special school for kids like him. And that's where I met Mrs. Anderson.
She was in the special school.
Yes, she was. She was in the special school. And she treated all the kids the way she treated me. And she reached them.
And then what happened?
And then, well, I started playing basketball at that point, and I was terrible at basketball, but I had told myself, what happened was my parents moved around. They worked for Boeing. And Boeing is very much like being an Army brat. Every few years, they moved you someplace else. And so I didn't have anybody around that could teach me anything. So when I started going out for sports, I was pretty good at baseball, but I was the new kid on the block, and so all the kids came around and told me that I was an idiot and I was terrible and all this, and I'm like, I'm not putting up with this. I'm walking away.
Yeah.
So I did this with all the sports, and finally I decided I'd go out for basketball, a sport that I hated. I would tell everybody at that time I hate basketball. To this day, I have no idea why I did it, but I went ahead and I got that same new kid on the block. You're an idiot, and I remember going home that night and crying and saying to myself, Neal, you have quit everything you've ever tried because it's hard putting up with the ridicule. You cannot quit this no matter what.
Oh, very interesting.
And so at that point, I stuck it out throughout the entire year. And from beginning to end, I was still terrible. But I made it all the way through. But a funny thing happened was, my team made it to the championship team, the game of the school, and I was so bad, but they had to play me, and my coach was a kid that was just an 8th grader, and he told me, oh man, now we're going to lose because we've got to put Neal in the game, and obviously you can know how that made me feel,
yeah.
Right? And we got in there, and I wasn't part of the game. I really wasn't. The ball went up at the last second. We were down by 1 point. It literally went around the rim, fell into my hands. I threw it up. It went through, and we won by 1 point because of one basket that I made, and that was the only one I made all year. And at that point, all the kids came around, and they were hugging me and cheering me, and I'm like, at that point, I fell in love. It's like, I want this feeling again. It may take a long time to get it back, but I want this feeling again. And so I stuck with it, and it took me a lot of years, but I got the feeling back.
And you were still in this same school?
Yes, at that point, yes.
Okay. And now, had the teacher that got through to you, had she moved on to something else? Had you moved on, or was she still with you?
What was really interesting to me, because at the time I was devastated. My parents moved at the end of that year, and I only had that teacher for about 5 months. So when we moved, you're taking Mrs. Anderson away from me? Wow, you can't do that. I'm crying. 11 years for somebody to teach me that I'm worth something, and you're taking her away. Well, we moved from Philadelphia to Millbrook, New York, from a large school to a very little school. And at the little school, nobody knew me as the idiot. All they saw was the smart little boy that Mrs. Anderson had brought out. And so I had a brand new start.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
And you that's the way you saw it.
Yes, it was a brand new start. Yeah.
That's very interesting.
Yeah.
How much of an influence do you think moving from school to school as a child, how do you think that affected you?
In many ways, it was extremely difficult because you never had friends, and you were always the new kid.
Yeah.
You were always a new kid. But on the other hand, I got to see things that I never would have been able to see. I told you I'm an inventor, and that I will look into everything. I mean, I actually told somebody how a snapping finger, I investigated how this works. People think that, see, crazy inventor?
Yeah.
Right? Well, my parents were moved to Louisiana during the space race. And they actually worked and built on the Saturn V rockets. So at the age of about 8, I got to see these rockets being built.
Wow.
Yeah, 30 stories tall. And I got to go through and see them. And I was old enough that I had glasses so I could actually see them.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was one of the highlights of my life. Oh my goodness, and then to watch them go to the moon and say, I saw this, I saw them building this, the most complicated, largest, most powerful machines ever built. And I got a chance to see them. So on one hand, it was really difficult. On the other hand, there were some really cool things.
There were some real opportunities.
Yeah, some real cool things that happened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So moving around has some pluses, but it has some minuses as well.
Sure. Absolutely everything does. Yeah. Anytime you're working on an invention, you've got to look at the pluses and the minuses, because there's going to be minuses in there. Nothing is all positive.
And so who is going to be the reader of this book?
The reader of the book really reaches people who are struggling to know who they are. They're struggling inside. They've been programmed to think that they're not worth anything. I was told that I was, well, I'll use the word once. It's a very offensive word, but I was told I was a retard. Over and over and over and over and over. So my head started playing that.
Yes.
And as an adult, it just kept playing it. And so in here, you actually get past that, because it's so simple, your brain can't ignore it. And so I got past that, and that hasn't run in my head in years.
Did you ever find that teacher again?
I never did.
No.
She was an elderly teacher, and I'll guarantee she's not with us today. But no. And she'll never know, unless on the other side in the spirit world she knows what a difference she made, because it was massive. And this book is dedicated to Mrs. Anderson.
You know, it might be interesting to find her children.
I've thought about that.
Yeah, we have thought about that.
I think you should.
Yeah.
I know that in the first book that I wrote, I talked a lot about my reflexology teacher. And she definitely was gone, because she died when I was working as a reflexologist when she died. But her children found me.
Wow.
Through the book.
Wow.
Well, that's
awesome.
because of the computer. But I really think that there is a need for you to find the children and tell them and send them some copies.
That would be awesome.
Oh, yeah.
I think that would be a
awesome.
lovely thing
That
to
would be
do.
awesome. That'd be awesome.
Finding her children had such an impact on me that now, anytime that I encounter a person who has influenced me in my life, I definitely tell them. And if that person is dead, if that person is not around, then I go down.
You go down.
Go
okay.
down.
Okay.
And you know, sometimes they're not interested. I contacted a man that I knew in Mexico City
Okay.
back in 1968. I mean, it was a long time ago. And I found him on Facebook. And I did send him a note, and he's not responding.
Okay.
And that's okay.
Yeah, that's
okay. If he ever does, I'll send him a copy of the book. And there are times in which I'm not completely comfortable offering the book to someone, but nevertheless, I do try to send it. I think it's important.
Cool.
I think it's important.
That's awesome.
We need to know the ripples.
Right.
Because that's one of the things that I think is important in your book.
Yes.
And you may not have said it that way, but it's...
Well, one of the really cool things, it sounds like it's getting off on another track, but it's actually the exact same thing. My first wife passed away very, very suddenly, and then 4 years later, this beautiful lady came along too. So she and I had a mail order business where I coached kids by mail. I wrote out programs on how to train for basketball, And what I was doing was I was coaching some kids locally, and they came to me and says, Neal, there's so much that you're teaching us, we can't remember it all. Can you write it down? So I wrote it down. Some time went by. A kid came up to me that I didn't know, and he says, did you write this? And I said, yeah. He goes, this stuff is really cool. I says, why don't you sell it? So my wife and I started selling it, and the reason was because I had to figure out everything on my own. So that how many kids out there don't have a dad at home, don't have a coach? And I said, well, none of this is magical, but it'll save them all those years to figure it out. So we started selling it, and then when she died, very, very suddenly, 16 hours notice, she collapsed on the floor and she was gone. Well, I literally went back into the office, and every time I went in, I just sit down and cried.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I can't do this anymore. And so I let it go. All these years go by, and what was it, 2 weeks ago?
About 2 weeks ago.
About two weeks ago, we got an email from a guy who is now in his 40s, and he was one of our customers thanking us for what we had done all those years ago. Yeah, she and I both were sitting there crying.
Yeah, I was like, couldn't believe it.
And we did get back with him.
Yeah, it's really interesting how people do connect.
Yeah.
Well, so that's an important thing.
And he still has those programs from when he was a kid.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm impressed at how you sold them.
That was the frustrating part with the book here.
Right. Back then it was,
we were literally selling 10,000 copies of those a year.
Wow.
We were selling 10,000 copies a year, and we were just taking out ads in magazines.
Really?
Yeah, that's all we were doing. And the money was just kept coming in, and we kept helping people. And I say, hey, this is great. Now the book comes along, it's like, nah, it doesn't work no more.
No, it's a different thing.
Yeah.
It is a different thing.
Yeah.
Well, I think I think that you and I both, as well as many people who have written books, and I know you've run across a lot of people because I am running across more and more. I think that we are all finding that writing and publishing a book is a new thing. And there are no rules yet.
Yeah.
The only people that are going to go with the old way are those who have written a book. They're young. They've got to be under 30 probably. And they've got to write a book that has such an impact on a publisher that they think this kid is going to sell millions of copies.
Mm-hmm.
And we can take this young person and we can mold him or her into what we need. You cannot do that with a person our age.
Well, you can't do that with a person our age, but I also would, this is going to sound sinister, but I want to warn everybody, not just the kids, but everybody. One of the things that happened was I invented something, and there was a company out in California, a very, very large company, who wanted this invention very, very badly. Mm-hmm. And so, long story short, my mother was a patent paralegal, one of the best in the world. So I didn't have to go through a lawyer. So I would literally write the contracts, run them past her, and they were simple. They weren't complicated, they were simple.
Right.
And we'd send them out to them. Then they would write a really complicated one and send it back to me. I would sit down and I would start to read this complicated one, and I'd get to a place where it says, we will give you 50 cents a unit for as long as we feel like giving you 50 cents a unit.
Right.
Right? And so I'm like, it doesn't matter how complicated this stupid thing is. That's the only thing that matters.
Right.
That's all. Right?
Yes.
And we ran into another gentleman who published a book, got someone to publish it for him. He did not read the fine print. They told him that he was going to get almost all the money from his sales for the first 2 years. And in the first 2 years is where the book sells for the most part.
Right.
Right? So he went ahead and he signed this contract without reading it. And what the contract said was, we're not releasing the book for 2 years.
Right. So he got nothing.
So be really, really careful. Really careful.
That's true.
Yeah, be really careful. And the more complicated it is, be more careful then.
Right.
Because it doesn't have to be complicated.
Well,
it doesn't have to be.
That is why I feel it is to our advantage to learn to publish and market our own books.
Yeah.
It makes it a much more complex project, but it is the only way, because
I believe it.
otherwise publishing is not what it used to be, and you cannot just set the publisher up as the bad guy.
Right.
I mean, these are the times, this is how this industry has morphed, and this is the way it's coming forward. I know that not this summer, but last summer, I did a book day. You guys were in the book day.
Yeah.
We were.
And remember, there was a writer there, her name was Erica Obey. And Erica Obey is a very well-respected author.
Okay.
And she came, and I didn't. None of us realized it at the time what a gift she was. And she said, "Listen, you just need to do this yourselves, because as a young person or as a first-time writer, you're not going to get the attention you need anyway. So just learn to give yourself the attention and take care of the book yourself." So I think she was right.
Right.
I think
I
she was
agree.
really right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you're young enough, or if you're talented enough, eventually someone will come along and help you, or you will do it
Absolutely. Yeah.
yourself.
Yes.
But putting your heart and putting your future on somebody else's sailboat
Right.
or whatever
Yeah.
is just not worth it.
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Yeah,
Not
well,
in
you
today's
have to
market.
be really, really careful. You
Yeah.
really do.
You do. I've never really brought that up at on a TV program, but I honestly believe
Yeah.
that it's somewhat important. I do believe that it's extremely important also that we do publish our books and that we do stay with them from beginning to end. It is such a journey, isn't it?
It is.
That
Oh
is.
my goodness. We have learned so much.
Yes.
Yes.
And
Yes.
have you begun to start your second book yet?
In a sense, I have, because I do blogs. And,
Wonderful.
You know, and so the blogs are, you know, the way I think and why I analyze things from an inventor's point of view. How does this all
Does
pan
your blog
out?
have a name?
Is it just Neal Brownell? Is it
It's
Neal
just,
Brownell?
yeah, it's just on,
She does all that.
it's on the main page of Neal Brownell, the Crazy Inventor website.
Oh, it's on the website.
Yeah,
And so if you go to Neal Brownell,
the Crazy
the
Inventor.
Crazy Inventor, there is his blog. And about how often do you post?
We were posting it every week for a long time, but we weren't getting very many followers because they've changed the algorithm. And so at that point, I said, well, let's go after the speaking for a little while and get in front of people's groups, and then we'll get back to that. And so we're just now starting to get back to it, and it hasn't been like years or any by any
Now
stretch
wait a
of
minute. You
imagination.
did this blog for how long?
You've done it for about 2 years now, I believe.
Every week for 2
And
years.
you had readers.
We did have
Yeah.
and we still do.
We still do.
I'm
we still
going to
do.
suggest that you need to continue. The philosophy that I have read is that when you open up a blog, that for the first 2 years, no one
Is that right?
reads it. No one.
Is that right? Well, where were you
Absolutely.
when I needed you?
I think we have about 20 people maybe.
That is enormous. That is enormous. I read a book written by Nina Amir, A-M-I-R, and that's How to Blog a Book.
I bought it actually, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so Nina says you need to blog, you need to post every day. I did everything that Nina said, and Nina said you need to post 3 times a day, every day, 7 days a week for the first couple of months, and then you go down to 2 times a day, and then finally I posted once a week. And I still have readers.
Okay.
But she said, and people said, I read it over and over again, do not expect anything in the first 2 years.
Okay.
One of the things I did, which taught me a lot about blogging, was LinkedIn, and I don't know if they still have them. LinkedIn had some blogs for beginning bloggers.
Okay.
And so you may be able to come up with some, and they were very informative and very supportive
Awesome.
and really helped.
Awesome.
And this is a way, using your blogs, you can use your blogs to help you find places to market,
speak and things,
to
yes.
speak.
Yes.
I'm thrilled that you are going to be and are marketing your speaking engagements now, because the public is so hungry for a voice.
Yes. 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 Yes.
The public has read enough, all the books they can stand. They have listened to all the audiobooks. They have watched all of the TV programs. You know, we want to do people. And I have done Zoom. Have you done any Zoom?
We've done some Zoom, right?
On the podcast.
On the
We've done
podcast.
On the
Zoom,
podcast.
Right.
Zoom can be very frustrating.
Oh, yes.
I was. Have you done many presentations straight off of Zoom?
What have we done? It
The
hasn't
only
been a
things,
whole lot.
the only
but-
things we've really done on Zoom are the podcasts that we've done.
Yeah, and we have a YouTube channel that we've done.
Do you really?
Yeah, we
That's
have a
wonderful.
YouTube channel. I love the audience. Remember, I'm a very spiritual person, and I sense people's spirits. So when I stand in front of a crowd, I can get the feel for this. This is probably a really strange thing to compare it with, but I used to go to parties, and at the party, I was lost. I mean, totally lost. I didn't know where to stand, what to say, what to do, nothing. I would then go to a funeral and know everything I needed to do. And I said, Neal, that is weird.
No, it's not.
That is really weird. And after I thought about it for a while, I said, wait a minute. At a party, everybody has a different feeling,
Yes.
right? Some people are angry, some people are
Yeah, it was
happy.
mass confusion.
Right. But at a funeral, everybody
Everybody
has
is
the
focused.
same
They're all
feeling.
focused,
As
yes.
difficult as it is,
They're
it's
all
still
there.
just one. So when I stand in front of a crowd, I can sense the crowd. And it's so much fun to start teaching and feel them starting to come alive and hear and understand. We had some kids come up to us. We taught about bigotry and not judging people. And we actually had some kids come up to us and whisper in my ear after the class saying, I'm the bully. And after your class, I need to look deeper. Exact words. I need to look deeper. I got tears in my eyes, and this has happened more than once.
That's wonderful.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's important that you get beyond the Zoom and get beyond the book and get beyond. So that for you, I feel that this book is a tool
Yes, absolutely.
that gets you to the people.
Yep.
And I agree with you that speaking to groups of people, you can play off the people,
Yes.
which
Oh,
is
yeah.
very
Yes,
important.
yes.
I think that's an extremely important part of successful public speaking,
Sure.
is being able to play off the public. So I'm hopeful that you will begin to give your presentations soon. And I
We
think-
just started
it's-
contacting people.
I think the audience is ready. I think people are ready for this. I truly do. I have hesitated for myself to do this, and I had a woman contact me on an email this week, and she said, you know, when are you going to give a workshop on Reiki? And
Okay.
I immediately realized she didn't mean her and myself.
Right.
She meant a workshop with
Right.
people.
Right? Right?
And my first thought was, and I am after 3 or 4 days of letting this incubate, I am realizing that it is time.
Sure.
That it is
Sure.
time.
Yeah.
And we have learned to follow the guidelines of the health authorities. And if everybody is vaccinated and people wear masks, I see no reason why we cannot just forge
Right.
ahead.
And
I
he's
don't
also
know.
he's also developing other speeches other than the book. too.
Absolutely.
You know.
Yeah.
So that's been fun to actually get some other topics on the speaker sheet, and that's
Yes.
been nice. Yeah.
Well, Zoom might be a good thing for practicing, for rehearsal, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
I've done some Zoom. You know who's very good with Zoom is the West Hurley Public Library.
Mm-hmm.
She's
Okay.
very good. She's not afraid of Zoom at all. And she has done several programs with me on Zoom, and she
Nice.
was successful.
Nice.
But a lot of for me, a lot of success on Zoom depended upon the expertise of the person who was
Okay.
the Zoom hostess.
Mm-hmm.
And if that person doesn't know what they're doing, you're not going to get a program.
Right.
You know,
Right.
and there's no sense in trying to get angry or upset or whatever.
I
If you
actually
can't
did
learn, you can't
one
learn.
program where they wanted me to do it on the phone. And phones nowadays are like walkie-talkies.
Yes.
You can't both talk at the same time, so you don't know when the other person is going to finish and when you should. It was a disaster.
Have you tried, what do you think is the future of, say, a tablet or something of that nature?
Don't know a lot about it, I'll be honest.
I don't either.
I don't know a lot about it.
Well, the reason I brought that up is because in healthcare they're using the tablet.
Okay.
You know.
Okay, right.
when-
The
you know,
doctors and things.
When you interact with your physician,
Right.
you know, it's with this tablet. I don't even possess one. I do not know. But it's something that I think in 6 months or a year you're going to be, or less than a year, 6 months or less, you're going to be an authority on it, right?
I hope so.
You know, and being an authority would be learning to use this tool, because I think writers are ready to do that, you know. And
Is writing a therapy for you?
is writing therapy? I don't know. I have not until very recently identified as a writer.
Okay.
I went through a lot of writing classes and I have written several books, but writing was not something I wanted to do. It was not something that I aspired to do. I have begun to see it as grounding,
Okay. Okay.
but I don't see it as therapy.
Okay.
And I don't know any writers who see it as therapy. Oh, you do? Oh, really?
Yeah, I do. I honestly do. Well, part of it is because I am an inventor, and so when I write it down, anytime you're working on a project, you have to keep notes, and you have to know how you got to where you're at. And so if I'm really upset, like I was a few nights ago, and it was almost midnight, and we had worked since 6 o'clock that morning.
Oh my
Right,
goodness.
and it was almost midnight, and I was really upset. And I said, Linda, you just go to bed. I'm going to sit down and just get this off my chest. I'm going to write what I think is going on. And so I just sat down for a couple of hours and started writing. And afterwards, I felt so much better.
So that was a therapeutic exercise for you.
Yes, yes. Plus, then I have something to put on the blog, and I have, yeah.
Well, that's interesting because I know that when I was going to Gotham Writer
Okay.
School, and I don't even know if that place is still open in New York City because of the pandemic, one of the things that the teacher shared with us was that that as we wrote memoir, which is what this is, as we wrote memoir, we were telling a story that needed to be told, but it was not therapy.
Okay.
And I have recently, and I'm not a therapist, and I am not
I was going to hire you.
I have only recently begun to volunteer in a very limited way to learn about people who do seek therapy. And I have been working for 5 years in a company where people are seeking therapy. And those who seem to be very good at using therapy, their brains are extremely well organized.
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I have or had a therapist because of COVID. She's a little bit older and she was scared to meet people at that point, so I lost her. And she's a hospice nurse. Can you imagine what kind of communication skills she needs to deal with somebody in the last 6 months of their life? And the communication skills is amazing. So I hired her for her communication skills. And when I went into her office the first day, she says, well, what can I do for you? I said, well, I need a coach, and the spirit world picked you. And so we literally just sat there, and I said, I want to teach this, and this is how I'm going about. Would you go about it that way? And she says, well, yeah, I would, or no, I wouldn't. And we would just discuss how to say things, which is really, it was a lot of fun. I miss her.
Yeah.
And it was therapeutic for me tremendously, because it's like, okay, I'm thinking in the right direction here.
You were actually coming down to you were developing a dialogue for a class.
Yes.
And you chose but you didn't choose her because she was a hospice nurse.
I shouldn't have chose her because she was the one that got us together. My first wife passed, and her mom passed, and this hospice nurse was running the class that Linda and I met in.
And she knew me before she knew him. So
was she a hospice nurse when she was giving this class?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And she was giving this class to the survivors?
Yes.
Right.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Was she doing that as a service of the hospice?
Yes.
Yes. Grief counseling.
Very interesting. That is very
and her
interesting.
communication skills were just incredible.
Yeah, she's incredible.
They're just incredible, because you have a whole group of people, and all of them are grieving, and so their moods are all over the place, and she had to control that group, and she did it so easily and so beautifully.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, I would love to have you teach me some things.
Wow.
Yeah.
Do you have any wisdom that you gleaned from her?
Any wisdom that I gleaned from her? I can't just put my finger on one thing, and I really don't want to go into any certain subjects, because if I say remember, the brain turns it off if you don't say it right.
Yeah.
And so I don't want to go
Not
into
willing to
yeah.
share
At this point, unless I can explain the whole thing, I went to get my hair cut yesterday. It was yesterday.
That was yesterday.
Yeah, it was
wasn't
yesterday. Went to get my hair cut yesterday. Linda and I we have a house cleaning business, and so we go out and we clean house all day. We've been coming home and working until almost 1 a.m, virtually every night. And so by the time yesterday came around, I was beside myself. I couldn't deal with it anymore. And so I went in to get my hair cut, and this woman really doesn't know me. We had just started using her. And so I got to talking to her, and I started saying, well, this is what I want to teach, but I'm not going to, and I told her, I'm not going to use a word, because that word will automatically turn you off. Your brain will just automatically, bang, you will not hear another word.
Yeah.
I said, so I'm not going to use that word. I'm going to go around it. And when I go around it, I'll come back to it. And by the time I came back to it, she was like, are you kidding me? Because I would have never heard that had you said it starting out with that word. So I can't really jump into anything right here, right now.
That's very interesting. You're at a very, very interesting place in your book.
Mhm.
I am hopeful that you are able to overcome the pandemic to make your book the success that it is.
Thank you.
But even now, I'm beginning to realize that that book it doesn't matter whether you sell 5 copies or 5,000.
At this point, an awful lot is the speaking.
Yeah.
An awful lot is the speaking.
Yeah, it has.
Yeah.
The last time that I talked to you here, the book was much more important.
Yes. Yes.
And I'm
Yes.
beginning to see that it's really not. And it never was. We were completely off on that one. Or I was.
Yeah. Well, no,
misread
I
it.
was too.
Yeah.
I was too. Yeah, absolutely. I know that some people, you got to remember, because I was born blind, I am extremely spiritual. And so I'm always going, just give me an idea of what I should do. Just give me an idea. And it's been so frustrating because I thought it was the book. And I kept
It's not.
thinking it was a book. But, well, the book taught me how to communicate to other people.
Did the book give you? Did the book ground you? And did the book give you like an outline of what
Yes.
you're supposed to do?
Yes.
So this was like the prelogue.
Yes. Yes.
Now, were you holding up 3? Listen, quickly, can we hold up the book? And how can a person get in touch with you?
Okay, you can do everything, all of the...
I can do everything?
Yeah, there you
Okay.
go.
Well, there is, we do have the doorwaybook.com, and
And we're actually giving it away for a while
well,
to get it out there. We do ask for a little shipping and handling, and that's all. It's like $10 or something. But
Right.
you can get it right now for virtually free.
and you also get a lot of bonuses that are on there. Some of them are in Neal's programs. One is called Mental Power. And so that is that situation. You can also go to Neal Brownell, thecrazyinventor.com, and that shows the blog and the book and a lot of different things. You can also, if you want to, email him at Neal Brownell, thecrazyinventor@gmail.com. So,
And pretty much if you look up The Crazy Inventor, you'll find me. So that was another reason.
If you Google The Crazy Inventor,
Yeah.
we got you.
Yeah.
and that's the YouTube channel also.
And if you belong to an organization or any kind of a group, and you'd like to have Neal come and speak,
Yes,
how
absolutely.
do they get in touch with you?
It's the same way. Just
Just-
yeah,
just
the
go
same
after-
way.
We can give the phone number too,
Go
which
ahead.
is 657-3009.
That's a wonderful
Yeah.
number.
Yeah.
This has been, I don't know how it has been for you, but this has been the most amazing program for me, because this has been the first time when I really realized that we're not here just for the book.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
Correct.
It is a tool like
Yes.
anything else.
Yes.
Right.
Even if it did take 10 years to get together.
But think of the learning that you went through during
Yeah.
that time.
Yeah.
I told Linda, says, think of where we've come, what
Yes.
the knowledge we have that we didn't
Yes.
Yeah.
have.
Yeah, that's
Yes,
true.
part
That's
of the
true.
journey. And I am so grateful to have seen you this evening.
Oh, thank
And
you.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much.
It was fun.
And thank you, Miss Ellen. We loved it.
Yes. Thank you.